And we have with us Sheba, Karim, Ashok, Ferry, and Minal, Hajratwala to talk about scripting erotic novels with not just 50 shades, but 69 shades of grey. Why the number 69? Well, I'll really leave that to your imagination. We have with us Sheba Karim, who writes fiction for young adults and adults. Her young adult novel, Skunk Girl, was published in the United States, Denmark, India, Italy, and Sweden. 2 of her short stories have been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. She was the 2009-2010 Fulbright Nehru Scholar. She is the editor of Alchemy and the Trankabar Book of Erotic Short Stories 2, released in November 2012 by Trankabar Press, and is now currently working on a historical fiction novel set in the 13th century India and a young adult novel set in the 21st century New Jersey. We welcome you, ma'am. Next, we have on stage Mr. Ashok Ferry, Colombo-based author of Kolpeti People, 2002, and The Good Little Ceylonese Girl, both of which are shortlisted for the Gratian Awards. Besides being an acclaimed writer, Ferry is a builder, scriptwriter, comedian, mathematician, personal trainer, and an illustrator. He lectures at the Design School and Colombo School of Architecture. His new book, The Professional, which has also been nominated for the Gratian Prize, has just been released. We welcome you, sir. Next, we have with us Minal Hajratwala, who is a poet and the author of Leaving India, My Family's Journey from 5 Villages to 5 Continents. The book won a PEN USA Award, Lambada Literary Award, and the California Book Award, and was shortlisted for the Saroyan International Writing Prize. She is the editor of Out Stories from the New Queer India 2012. She attended the Stanford University and the Columbia University. She is also the co-founder of the Great Indian Poetry Project. We welcome you, ma'am. I would also like to welcome our moderator for the session, Mr. Harish Bijoor, a brand expert and a CEO of Harish Bijoor Consults, Inc. He recently published the book Marketing Trends, Smart Insights into the World of Indian Business, and is currently involved in his second book on core branding. He has simultaneously been commissioned to write a book on customer service mechanisms at play in contemporary marketing context to moderate the discussion. Mr. Bijoor is also the advisory board member of the Bangalore Literature Fest. He's also active on Twitter, and you can find him at Harish Bijoor.
Okay, very good evening to each one of you. Pleasure being here in your midst. I must warn you that this is definitely an adult session. I don't understand what this young lady talks about, young adult, etc. Adult is adult, okay? And I've read her, and I think seriously this is adult stuff. So if any of you are not above the age of 18, may I request you to kindly leave this place. The second thing I want to say is there's parental guidance minimum required out here, because these guys next to me, and when I say guys, it means all the very pretty young ladies around me as well. These are terrible people. They write erotica. And they look this way, but if you read what they write, my God, your mind is going to get blown. So if you really ask me, if you're here under no duress, and you're here under your own volition, and I'd request you to kindly, whenever you feel like shutting your ears, please shut your ears. We're going to be very, very explicit. 69 shades of gray. First of all, the person who thought up 69 shades of gray, I mean, hats off to you. I need to come and peek into your mind. I need to understand what happens at different points of time. Scripting erotica, that's what we're talking about. We have an editor out here with us. We have Minal, who is the closest to I, which is, she lives in Whitefield, I'm told. We have Sheba, who happened to be around in Greece and suddenly decided that let me hang on in Bangalore for a little while for the Bangalore Lit Fest. So we're blessed to have her here. And of course, Ashok is from nearby Colombo. And I think he's taken great efforts to be here with us today. I'm going to say that, when I look at this particular subject, erotica has been around in our lives for a long, long period of time. I think erotica is the oldest business of them all. And I think it precedes the oldest business of them all, even. Because, when I was researching erotica, I was trying to understand when erotica started. And I'm told there's something called oral erotica. Now, you dirty people don't think what you're thinking. It isn't that. There's an oral tradition of passing on erotica by the word of mouth. Okay? Now, word of mouth is the first piece of erotica that ever hit anybody at any point of time. And India itself seems to have a very ancient tradition of oral erotica. This oral erotica got translated into erotica etched onto stone, because that was a great way of communicating what you want to communicate as erotica. So you find stories on our temple walls which actually tell you a lot. Khajuraho is a classic example. And then erotica actually traveled on, and we have erotica in our poetry. In some of our bhakti literature, if you really look at bhakti literature, I mean, it's filled with erotic poetry. I'm going to ask Minal in a little while to talk about erotica and poetry in a little while. But essentially, I think, all this oral led to stone, and stone led to written erotica. And there are many verticals of erotica. I mean, young adult erotica is what we're talking about. India has moved from erotica of one kind to another kind. And I think the Kama Sutra is certainly one of the celebrated forms, which we'd really talk about. And apart from that, I think India has moved from being a nation which used to worship a serene middle-class woman called Lalitaji. Do any of you remember serfs Lalitaji, Samajdhari, etc.? From serfs Lalitaji, India has moved from Lalitaji to Savita Bhabi. So again, it's a relationship. But believe it or not, those of you who are twittering about Savita Bhabi know what I'm talking about. So there is a genre of erotica of sorts, which we call animated erotica. And animation also steps in. So at this stage, I'm really saying that, as we've moved from Savita Bhabi to, Savita Bhabi at this point of time from Lalitaji, I'm saying that erotica has moved. Erotica is an art, erotica is a science, and erotica is a philosophy in its own. So today we have with us practitioners of this art and science and philosophy of erotica. And I'm going to lead on to an open-ended discussion. But before I start, I would like each of the people around me, these erotic people, to introduce themselves. And I'd like to have them introduce themselves erotically. So, Sheba, I'm going to start with you, and maybe you could introduce yourself and then get into a piece of reading which you really believe is erotic.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sheba. I don't know about introducing myself erotically, but I will read an excerpt from the anthology I edited, Alchemy. There are 13 stories in the anthology, one of which is mine. I'm actually not going to read from my story. I'm going to read from a story called Semen, Saliva, Sweat, Blood. It's by an author called Hansta Sovendra Shekhar, whose first novel just came out from Aleph Book Company recently. And the premise of this story, it's about a young gay medical student who lives in Jharkhand, and he's very clear, he's out, he's very aware that he is gay, and he keeps getting into relationships with these men, usually other medical students who don't identify as gay and basically use and abuse him. And it's a very powerful and heartbreaking story, and one of my favorites in the anthology. So I'm just going to read a scene between the narrator and Nirmal, who is one of his lovers. I go straight to where I should have reached earlier and pull down his foreskin with its tiny mole on the right side. His glands smells of alcohol, my own anus, and our lube, Johnson's baby oil. I lick his whole penis very gently, stroking the perineum at the same time. Mother chode. This is a compliment. I continue, lick, slurp, stroke, lick, slurp. He holds my head still. Lie down, lie on your stomach. The condoms are finished. He takes the baby oil and puts some on his penis, gives it to me so that I can lube myself. He folds my left leg at the knee and pins my right leg straight. He's so strong, this man who lifts and pumps iron, that I can't even move an inch. He starts fucking me. Pain, pleasure, I don't know for sure. All I know is that I long to be fucked by Nirmal, my precious man. Chup, shut up. He places a hand over my mouth. His penis slides in and out of my anus, hurting, stimulating the inside of my perineum. Sali, next time I want it shaved, he commands, pumping, drilling wildly, stimulating my prostate, squeezing my chest with both his hands. I feel like I might bleed and ejaculate at the same time. He groans. He's about to come. I move my buttocks upwards to counter his thrusts, turning my head to look at his expression. He lets out a smile, that intoxicated smile I love to see. Come on, he whispers. He ejaculates and slumps over me for about a minute, my powerful man lying in a powerless heap on top of me, his naked skin against mine in an embrace that I wish could last forever. He rises. I hold his arm. Don't go, I plead. Lie down with me for a few more seconds. I want to keep him with me forever so we can fuck every hour of the day, every minute, but that will never happen. All I can do is keep him with me for as long as possible.
Sheba, what an introduction. Now you're going to beat me up, okay? Minal, I think let's get into an introduction from you. And you know, when I look at you, I'm really looking at the craft of erotica. Where does the craft of erotica come from? And if you have any representative sample of this craft, I'd love you to read it after an erotic introduction from you.
Hi. So Harish obviously comes from the marketing world, and he's doing a great job of selling erotica, which you're all already sold on since you're sitting here. So my name is Minal, and I am a poet and an editor, and I'm one of the co-founders of something called the Great Indian Poetry Project, which I think you'll be hearing a lot more about in the next year or so as we're publishing new and exciting poetry from India. And one of the things that we're discovering as we look at our manuscripts is that there is an erotic thread in quite a lot of poetry, and it goes back from, as Harish mentioned, ancient times in Indian poetry and also to contemporary times. And the connections there are really deep and rich and interesting. And the way that that erotic thread in poetry can connect to our modern notions of sex and sexuality is one of the things that I'm really interested in my own work, both as a poet and also as an editor and as just as a person living in India today, coming from America, which has a very different culture around sex and sexuality than we have here in India. So I'll read a poem which is part of a series, and the title of the poem is a little bit tongue-in-cheek and a little bit serious. It's called Feminism is the Theory, Pornography is the Practice. 14,000 days of loathing, what it meant to be female in our century, to scrape the body of its hair with chemicals or wax, blades, maraschino laser beams, to despise each flourish and protrusion, that third dimension always too extreme against the flat perfection we were taught to mold our wantings to press ourselves against, as if it were the one true book, and we just flowers, fairies, moths, trapped and preserved for study. Objects in the mirror meant to stay smaller than we were. We were not meant to see ourselves in joy. Against that sordid magazine story, do I dare to strip? project not slogans, but my lover's groans and scrunched expressions, quivering thighs, chipped nail polish toes, the honor of that tremor. I want to live in networks of orgasm where we swap sex stories as joyfully as now we share bad boss stories and videos of cats.
Wow, that sure is the craft which we were talking about. Ashok, if you could give me that introduction, which I'm craving for. And then, of course, a reading from your own book.
Sure thing. My name is Ashok Ferry. I'm from Sri Lanka. And I think I've been invited here because of this book, The Professional, which some wise guy has called deliciously erotic. Though I do assure you that if that's the only reason you read it, you will be sadly disappointed. I think I'm more known for my satire. The hero of the book is a young Sri Lankan, straight down from Oxford with a maths degree, who doesn't have a visa. So he ends up basically as a male hooker. And I'm going to read you just one little episode from it. He calls his clients Joes and Josephines because to him, they're all one big blur. So you see, it's always been me and her, your Josephine is saying. She's been part of my life for as long as I can remember. I wake up with her, I go to bed with her. At the words go to bed with her, your ears prick up. This could be an interesting night. Who, you ask hopefully, your best friend? No, you silly, she gives you an arch look. My vaginismus. How many times do I have to explain? Oh, you hire guys, you're all the same. Only one thing on your mind. Get in there quick as you can. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Well, not this time, Buster. Not this time. Your heart sinks at this. So you've done this before. She gives a little self-satisfied sigh, putting her thick blonde hair back into a knot, crossing her chunky thighs under the table to the juicy sounds of silken stockings rubbing up against each other. Dozens of times. Never works. When I saw your picture, I thought, Indian. Perhaps a touch of the Ayurveda will do the trick. The steak arrives and you tuck in because you know you have a long night ahead. She looks at your plate. You know it's horse, she says, and you almost choke. I'm Italian. I can always spot horse. She looks at you meaningfully from under her black eyebrows. Horse is good for a man, if you get my drift. The bedroom is pink and frilly, a femininity strangely at odds with your Josephine, who has heavy, solid limbs, typical of the southern part of the peninsula. You have a vision of her in black headscarf, her big feet with their splayed toes, mercilessly crushing grapes and other things. Down you go, she says in a sing-song voice, spreading her legs wide. Nothing will happen till I'm relaxed. Experience has taught you that in these cases, relaxation is next to impossible, especially with a complete stranger you're paying for by the hour. But you don't say this because the customer is never wrong. She settles in, putting her arms behind her head, smiling complicitly at the ceiling, which has no doubt been privy to many such previous episodes. And you find, in spite of everything, you're rather enjoying yourself, the vitamin-enriched gunmetallic taste of her nub, a fitting end to the steak dinner. But every time you come up for air, she pushes you back down firmly, her thighs tight around your head, and you think of grapes being crushed and other things. And when your time is up and the gates haven't yet opened, as you expected, she says almost victoriously, "There, I told you." And you know it is almost a point of honor with her that she should not have succeeded. I should ask for my money back, shouldn't I, she says fondly, for non-performance. You don't answer because by now you realize your tongue is probably damaged beyond repair. You may never be able to speak again. And who will hire a professional with a speech impediment? What's the matter, she says. Cat got your tongue? Honey, not just any old cat, you want to reply. One special pussy. But you hold your tongue because you remember what the wise man said. Discretion is always the better part of cunnilingus. And you hobble home mildly annoyed because you've been up all night and she didn't even have the good manners to take you in hand for all those man hours you bravely put in. Thank you.
Wow. Ashok, how much of what you write is you?
Oh God, here we go. I was really afraid of this question. Well, I'll tell you a funny story which illustrates this. When I wrote this book, I didn't let my wife read it. And take a piece of advice from me, never, if you're a married man, never write an erotic novel. Anyway, she only read it when the advance copies came, and she was really silent. And she was about halfway through the book, she said, "I'm not coming to the book launch." Really, the point here is that actually, it's not me. However, the character is me. I have invested the hero Chamath with my character. But as for the episodes, well, you will just have to guess. And I will just have to know.
And you expect me to believe what you're saying? Okay, forget it. This guy's not going to be straight.
It's so unfair.
I need to be very careful when I use these words. But the point is, let's come to you, Sheba. What got you to Erotica? You are a lawyer?
I was a lawyer.
You
yes.
were a lawyer,
I was a
and
lawyer.
you don't want to be a lawyer anymore.
No.
You want to be in erotica, young adult erotica? I don't understand that.
I write in 3 different. I write young adults, and I write fiction for adults, and I also do some erotica. I think I'm one of the few writers who writes in all 3 of those genres, and uses her own name. So.
Okay. And erotica is appreciated by men and women, both together? Most of the time?
Yes,
Most of the time?
yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
But when I look at the jacket of your book, which we were just looking at, both your
Yeah.
books, they have legs on them, and these legs don't happen to be hunky legs of a man.
Yeah.
They are these nubile legs of
Yes.
women all over. What's this about legs? Minal, maybe could you throw some light? Why do these jackets of books need to have women on them?
Well, it is really interesting that no matter what the actual content of an erotica book, it's usually the disembodied body parts of women that end up on the covers.
Ouch.
I suppose that the publishers think that, we're into that dismemberment or something like that. But I think it's very interesting, Ashok, in your case, because your book is about actually a male escort, that it still has these female legs on it.
Yeah, interesting you say that, because actually when the book was coming out and they were looking for book covers, my son, who is into photography, he did a cover which figured a male nude on it. But that was rejected by the publishers. Obviously, they felt that wasn't going to sell any books.
You guys who write erotica, actually, all of you included, generally tend to specialize in body parts, every kind of body part. Now, is there any one particular special body part which is about you, which you write about, which you do believe is that much more special? I'm talking to you, talking to you.
I don't know if I view any one body part as more special than another. I have noticed that I'm writing a historical fiction novel and also another young adult novel, which actually both have a lot of sex in them as well. And I tend to write a lot of cunnilingus scenes. And,
all right. We get an idea of what body part you're talking about now.
So, I'm a bit of a cunnilingus evangelist.
Okay.
But,
okay, there you are. I got the answer.
There's my
I got the
erotic
answer.
introduction.
I
Yes.
got that answer. Ashok, any particular body part? And Minal, from the way you see it. Ashok first.
No, not particularly. I don't think.
You equally respect every body part?
Yes.
Okay. Why a male escort, Ashok? Don't tell me why not.
Well, no. I think this book is set in 1980 London during the years of Mrs. Thatcher. You're all too young to have been part of it, but trust me, I was. And it was an age of such a golden age of riches when money was God and God was unemployed. It really was like that. And there were those of us who didn't have visas who ended up in this kind of strange half twilight world and I knew a lot of these guys. So that's perhaps why I wrote about them.
Okay. Minal, again, body part, the ear is a very special place as well, apart from 59 other body parts. How do you see it as an editor?
Well, certainly for a reader, the ear is an important part, and for a writer, the hand is a very important part.
Sure. But we aren't talking about that, right?
No, we are.
Okay.
I mean, I think that, there are 2 things that I'm interested in this conversation. One is that, the poor fiction writer is kind of constantly facing this battle of, is it you, is it you, is it you, is it your body, is it your story, is it your sex act? And I think somehow with erotica, that push is even stronger because we want to believe that there's a real person somewhere. And I think from my point of view, as an editor of many kinds of things, including short stories, I think that it's actually really important that the story feel real and feel realistic, and that's a more interesting question than is it the author's story.
Sure.
And in fact, the way to get at that is maybe a different kind of question, which is, what is it that makes a good sex scene? What is it that makes a good moment, an intimate moment? And I find that sometimes in erotic writing, it is that body part. It is the way that a body part can be really specifically and beautifully described by a writer, even if it is not the thing that we conventionally might think of as stereotypical and beautiful. So, for example, in Sheba's young adult novel, Skunk Girl, there is this very beautiful recurring theme where the main character has this strip of hair down her back. And this is a source of a lot of emotional drama and trauma. But for me, as a writer and a reader and an editor, I look at that and I think, wow, that's real craft, that she's able to so intimately draw this portrait of this particular body, and to make the body specific is what gets me hot when I'm reading.
Wow, that's very
And
interesting.
Can I just cut in?
Yeah.
And I think, we're having a lot of fun up here, but I just to preface this, it's extremely difficult to write sex well, and I'm sure many of you have tried to write a sex scene, and it's very challenging, and it's its own art. And as Minal was saying, the physicality of it, creating empathy for the character, momentum in the sex scene. I mean, all of the things that it takes to write a good scene in general. It's the same for writing about sex. So I don't want our jokes to lessen the fact that there is a real craft to writing sex well.
Sure,
And
Sheba, if you look at the
particularly-
craft, again, if I look at the craft, I'm going to ask each one of you this question on the craft itself. When you really look at the craft of writing a sex scene, there are two parts to it. One is the physical situation of an ongoing act, and the second is a desire for it. Which is more powerful? Is the desire more erotic, or is the actual act more erotic from your personal writing style and the way you craft yourself?
I think ideally they go hand in hand, because the act itself, without the desire, people often, I've been asked this question so many times, what's the difference between erotica and porn? And I think, at least filmically, porn is more about the act itself, and you don't really know the characters, whereas in erotica, you have the desire because you know something about the characters, you experience their bodies in a very sensory way, you might know something about their motivations. So what makes erotica powerful is a combination of desire and the act.
Okay, Ashok, there's anticipation of the act, and then there's the act. What do you focus more on? Where do you believe there's scope for building in more erotica, if at all?
I think it's a desire all the way.
Okay.
I think as we all know, the act is all too often rather disappointing.
Okay.
So
talk for yourself.
So I think it really is the desire and the subtlety of bringing that across, and you're breathless as you turn the page as the reader, waiting.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Okay, the editor's view at the end of it.
It really depends on the story. When I was editing a book called Out, Stories from the New Queer India, which is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender fiction from India, and there was a range of stories across the spectrum. So there was some sweet romantic stories, there was some stories that had nothing to do with sex and that were about family dynamics, and then there are a couple of pieces in there that are definitely erotic stories. So depending on the context of the whole story, as an editor, I try to make the sex scene to work with the writer to make the sex scene fit, and to figure out, why is this scene here? Is it erotica where the purpose of the story is to arouse the reader? Or is it that the sex scene is integral to the relationship between the characters? Sure. Or is it a moment that we just need to know that these two are lovers so that we can understand the rest of the story?
Sure. Ashok, your take on that?
In all fairness, we're all most of us are South Asians here, and we all have mothers, sisters, wives, brothers, etc. So I think that is probably why also we do find this difficulty in writing, and as Minal said, you have these 3 stages, and all too often you end up in that first stage where the ad comes on. And it's not that we don't want to, but we know that if the ad doesn't come on, we will never be accepted by a publisher, or never sell any books, or perhaps sell rather too many for the wrong reasons or whatever.
Sheba, if you really look at feminists and the way feminists look at erotica, is there a difference? I mean, because most of the time it's about the feminine body, at least, you know, a larger part of literature in this space, talking about the more beautiful, more pliable feminine body. How do feminists react typically to erotica? Is there a difference? I'm talking the feminists as a movement. Have you had any issues ever?
I don't think feminists have much of a problem with erotica. I think the reason we see feminine bodies so much on erotica covers is because the female body is just so commodified that people, when they think sex erotica, they just think, you know, feminine. But the stories in here are actually from all different male perspectives, female perspectives, and I think a lot of feminists have a problem with very male-centric porn where, you know, it's all about the money shot and not really about female pleasure, but because pleasure is so inherent to erotica, and the pleasure doesn't necessarily go both ways, but, you know, I don't really,
Okay.
I haven't, you know.
No issue on that scope. I was reading Rosalind DeMello, the blogger and the editor to an extent. She says erotica is a way for women to move from being objects of desire to reclaiming their bodies once again. Do you believe that's true?
I do. I think that, you know, feminism has had many waves and movements, and certainly there was an anti-pornography, you could almost say anti-sex movement within feminism. But since the 90s, we've had a very strong pro-sex feminist movement that really sees the centering of female desire as a feminist project. And I think Rosalind's work is a great example of that.
Yeah. I'm going to come very quickly back to Ashok, and I'm going to ask you, you know, where does smut stop and erotica begin? Because, you know, this seems to be a line. How thin is this line? How thick is this line? How identifiable is this line, if at all?
Actually, I have a theory that it's all in the words you use and the way you use them. I mean, first of all, one of the great difficulties I found is writing erotica. This is the very first time I've written anything that's even vaguely erotic, is to stop using cliches which will make it into comedy. Because if you talk about walking in somebody's flowery garden or his rod or whatever, you know, people just burst out laughing. It's just I mean, so absurd. So it's the words that I think define how truthful you are, whether you just want to titillate and make some money out of it, or whether you genuinely believe there is a story there that needs to be told or whatever. So I think it's in the words, actually.
Have you read Savita Bhabi? No. Okay, maybe you should take a look at it. In India, we have a culture. We have a very old piece of literature in India called Rasavanti. Okay? Tamil literature. Tamil pieces. I won't call it literature, but, you know, writing. And if you really look at it, it's one of the most popular pieces of pulp fiction which you find on the streets. And they percolate rural India in depth. And this is erotica for the rural Indian at the end of the day. Very explicit, a bit too explicit, very little of good language, but explicit. Would you call this kind of a thing erotica? Minal.
You know, to me, that question of porn and erotica is something that people bring up all the time, but I think it's something that I can't really get excited about. You know, to me, it's like saying, well, where is the line between magenta and fuchsia? And
Sure.
My sort of feeling about it is, you know, is it really so important to make that fine delineation? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, generally people tend to feel, well, if it makes other people corrupt, then it's pornography. But if it makes me wet, then it's erotica.
Very
so,
interesting.
You know.
Very interesting answer. It obviously means that writers of Rasavanti will never get called to the Bangalore Literature Festival. But that's a part, you know, that's quite apart from it. But erotica is equal to sex. Isn't that a wrong formula? Erotica is equal to sex. Is it really so?
Erotica is equal to sex?
Yeah, erotica is sex. Why should it be only sex?
I don't think it is. It is only sex.
It isn't? Ashok,
Yeah.
you don't think it is, right?
I don't think so either.
So what is erotica? Define it.
Gosh, that is almost impossible because it means a different thing to each and every one.
You want to read something? that you've written?
I don't think I have anything else. No, but really, I mean, it means so many things to so many people that what we find erotic, somebody else might find porn, or what we find porn, they might, you know.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a point. You were mentioning, do feminists have a problem with erotica? I think it's not the feminists who have a problem with erotica. It's the people out there who are saying that if a girl wears a short skirt and she's asking for it. So it's more those conservative sort of people that have an issue with erotica and the discussion of female desire and the portrayal of female sexuality than feminists.
Absolutely. I feel like hitting these guys on the head, people who talk that way for sure. Minal, if you look at bridal mysticism, I mean, this is in our entire literature, and it stems from literature which is old, whether you look at the Gita Govinda, or whether you look at Mirabai, who came as a successor to that. Our Mahadevi Akka from Karnataka, in Kannada literature itself, Krishna and Radha, and the Gopikas. There's a very intricate relationship between poetry and erotica. Would you like to go a bit behind that?
Thank you. Absolutely. I'm actually working on a project on Mirabai, which will be a novel from her point of view. And it's very interesting to look at the original texts and then the various ways that they've been translated. And a really disturbing trend, in my view, in the translations is that the translations have often in modern times veered toward the religious side of the poem, bringing out that meaning, while sort of burying the erotic and sexual side of the poem. And I think what's beautiful about the work of Mirabai and some of the other Bhakti poets is that they actually manage to be quite explicit and erotic and body-centered, and at the same time have this spiritual element, which in modern conservative translations is kind of minimized and whitewashed out of it. And even if you speak to sort of people who are in that area of Rajasthan and who run the temples and so on, and they're singing the songs, they'll say, no, it's all a metaphor. All the sexuality is just a metaphor. The lover is a metaphor. And it's quite, from my interpretation and my study, quite clear that it's not a metaphor, that she was a person who really believed that she was having physical visitations from the god, and that she was having a very embodied experience of that, and that's what she was singing of.
And nobody stopped any of this literature for a long period of time, right? India was very, very open about it.
Yeah, and it really is, I think, in my view, a residue of the Victorian British Raj in India, which came in and sort of tried to neuter quite a lot of our sexuality.
You mean if the Brits hadn't come here, we'd be a different nation altogether?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
I think we'd be the nation of Khajuraho.
Khajuraho.
That is our real legacy.
So instead of Colombo being the capital of erotica, it would be India, somewhere in India, maybe Bangalore. Huh?
What are you all waiting for? Get up and...
Is there anything which you see as mainstream erotica, vis-a-vis, fringe erotica? Ashok, what I'm really talking about is mainstream erotica could be, Mills and Boon and Barbara Cartland have done erotica for dozens of years in this country, okay? Maybe our grandmothers used to read Mills and Boons, we don't know. So what's new? I mean, is that mainline erotica? And is there something called fringe erotica? Are you guys fringe erotica guys? And are the Mills and Boon and the Barbara Cartlands the mainline erotica
Be
guys?
careful with that word fringe. No, but really,
that's a lunatic fringe. Yeah.
It's shifting goalposts, shifting boundaries all the time. Because what was erotic in Mills and Boon? I'm sure our grandparents found Mills and Boon amazingly erotic.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to think go back to the earlier thing when you were discussing Indian texts from the ancient times. What about the Song of Songs in the Bible? Now, I went to a good Catholic Benedictine monastery where we were taught that the Song of Songs was actually an allegory, that it wasn't really about sex at all. Well, I actually think it's an erotic poem that accidentally found its way into the Bible. But to get back to Mills and Boon, I think the boundaries do change.
Yeah, 50 Shades of Grey? Not 69. What do you think? Is this mainline? Is it erotica at all, or is it somewhere else?
I think it's definitely mainstream in terms of it's attracted a very wide audience, I think, throughout the world. I think it's pretty poorly written. I don't know if any of the other panelists have read it.
Okay.
And rather unrealistic in its depiction of a lot of the sex. But,
Ouch.
but what it actually has had a huge influence. Minal and I were just talking backstage that they have a new genre called New Adult, which is similar to young adult, but with a lot of sex in it. And publishers are now asking authors, which is very new, can you put more sex in it? Can it be more sexy? And this is all a post 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon.
50 Shades of Grey, 40 million copies sold across the world, 216,000 copies sold in India. Okay, and that's big. But we still read 50 Shades of Grey at an airport with a cover put on it, a brown paper cover. And the bookshop actually gives you that brown paper cover. I mean, we haven't gone places. We haven't gone places as yet. What are the hooks you use? Are there some buttons? Let's come back to your craft for a little while. Are there some buttons, some E-zones, some hooks which you really use?
For me, the E-zone, the thing that is always the hottest and most exciting, is the thing that nobody else has written about.
Ah, interesting. And E-zone is not electronic zone, okay? It means the erogenous zone that we're talking about. What about you?
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with Minal. It's the shock of the new. It's the shock of the unexpected, something that you think, my God, that is really erotic, but you hadn't thought of it like that before.
But you have no special buttons, nubs, to use your language.
Not really. I think whatever I use tends to come subconsciously, and then when I reread it, I think, oh yes. So obviously that's what I think. It's actually writing erotica is kind of a great way of exploring yourself. You know, facing up to stuff that you never really faced up to anyway.
Okay. What about you? Any?
I would agree, something new, but I also think you could write a sort of more traditional sex scene very erotically if it's done, vividly and evocatively. So it doesn't necessarily have to be new.
Okay, but you don't believe there's a favorite button, really? No. Okay, that says it.
Button.
Okay, no buttons. Minal, if you really look at it, there's genres, different genres of, literature in this space, which is erotica. You could have. I've read some stuff which is travel and tourism oriented, which is really, about bus from Hubli. KSRTC journey from Kollam to this thing, etc. Blogs, a lot of them. Then there is the male gigolo, which some people specialize in. Then there is the paid sex worker, which some people specialize in. Same-sex erotica, infidelity erotica, and taboo erotica, and maybe 20 other genres. Which of these is the most successful? I mean, what do you believe? Is there a formula here? And here I'm speaking, business. I'm not speaking, the French, however their language is.
I think it's actually very hard to say because this market at least in English language contemporary stories that are erotic is quite new. Until recently, Indian publishers were very reluctant to touch erotica. And the Sheba's anthology is the second Tranquilbar erotica anthology. The first one, Electric Feather, really broke new ground and showed people, yes, you can publish this kind of book in India. You will not get shut down by the censor boards and so on. And so now I think there is actually a new openness in the Indian publishing field to this type of literature. But I don't think there's so much literature that we can now say, this type sells and this type doesn't. It's quite an open field. In India, there are other genres that I see that I wouldn't even say they're genres, but maybe sort of typical storylines that I see that I don't see as much outside of India. One is the sex with a relative. So there's quite a lot of sort of cousin and auntie and uncle kind of kind of sexuality. And I think it's because we are in these societies where there's very heavy sex segregation. So boys only stay with boys, girls only stay with girls. So those who want to write about opportunities for heterosexual sex, often the family is the main site of that. So, and some of that is erotica, some of it is a little bit, sort of borderline and strange, and then some of it is actually stories of abuse. And it's quite a strange little field there, what people are doing. And then another genre that I see in India is the boarding school, so same-sex encounters that happen within a boys' school or within a girls' school. And then I would say a third thread is this kind of travel story. So, I
Sure.
mean, I've been on the bus from Hubli. I don't think it's a particularly erotic situation, but I suppose for some people having, a dark place and
Yeah.
you're sitting close
And
to someone.
Yeah.
I would
it could
add
be-
sex with servants to that.
Ah, okay.
Also,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. But is there any genre you wouldn't touch in your writing, which is taboo for you? Taboo itself? Ashok? Anything you wouldn't touch? Are you limited?
In the field of erotica?
Yeah, totally. Something you wouldn't write about at all. You're anti-it.
Well, I think I'm anti-porn. Now, the thing is that we've been through all this, and I think Minal will disagree with me here. But I mean, all too often erotica just slides so effortlessly into porn.
Okay.
And the trouble there is that it's great to write. You have a great time writing porn, and I'm sure readers love to read it. But that's the end of you as a writer. I mean, nobody will take you seriously again.
Okay. Okay, one last question, after which I'm going to throw the authors and the editor across to you for your Q&A. The last question is, how deep is your drum? How deep is your creative drum? How deep do you scrape? Because you write and write and write. You write so much. How much more can you write? I mean, how far can you go? How deep can you go?
You go as deep as you can, and you keep digging. That's your job as a writer.
Minal, no, let's go with this guy, okay? That's a very good answer.
No, quite, absolutely true, absolutely true. And I think really the longer you wait, the more courage you have to go even deeper. I think when you start out, you tend to just scratch the surface, and then as you develop as a writer, you tend to mine other dark places.
All right. Minal, do you see writers plateauing off, repeating themselves, etc., etc.?
Well, I have both a flip answer and a deeper answer.
Okay.
Which would you like?
Let's go with the deeper one for a start.
Okay.
And the last word will be the flip answer.
Okay, so the deeper answer, well, I'm also a writing coach, and so I work with individual writers who are trying to further their own writing or, develop their work. And what I always say to them about this question is that you actually have much more than you know, and it's not even limited. My drum is not limited to my own body and my own experience.
Right.
It's actually not even as small as this field or this city or this world. It's as huge as our imaginations, which we know now that our imaginations can go to Mars, to the next galaxy.
Right.
So our drum is the
Lovely.
whole entire universe,
Lovely.
right?
Lovely.
We have no shortage of material.
You want to go for that flippant
But
one?
the flip answer is, there is this saying, Harish, it's not the size of the boat. It's the motion in the ocean.
All right, we get more erotica for that. Okay. How erotic can you get, Minal? Okay, guys, it's been a pleasure being here. And we're opening it to questions now. Please feel free to ask whatever you want from these three. Yeah. Could we have the mic there, please? Kindly wait just a moment. You get the mic there. Please let go.
You were noting about Baswanti in Tamil literature, right? In Tamil literature also Tirukural. There's one part that is called Kamathapal, but that you didn't mention about. And the other one is to Minal, and she told about the ancient kind of erotica,
Right.
In Tamil literature as well as in Tamil sculpture, in Tamil Nadu, you can see any kind of, sculpture in the architect way form. You can see any kind of emotions as well as the sex kind of a thing between the king and the queen, as well as the king and the dases.
Sure.
You can find it over there. You didn't mention it over.
I didn't. That's a correction. Okay, let's have questions out here. Let's have any questions? Yeah, there's one there, please. Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Jairaju. Actually, I studied in an Air Force school in Jarli West. No, all I am saying is this particular area was like, is this speaking? No, what I'm saying is sexualism in a book and how it affects a person as he grows up and all that. We are now chatting about just what we say is an ultimate of sexism or sexist theories. The main thing is, as a child, we're having Nick Carter's or Harold Robbins books and the interplay of the author placing it in the right spiritual way in between. But what I feel is a student or a guy who's, I'm not saying a gender-based, I think as they're going along with the novel or the theory and finding it right in between it and just continuing on and making their life. And how it goes on into the later part of the adult life, I think is properly programmed. I think it is much necessary that we find it in the right placement. I'm not just giving a quote. I'm just
Okay, it's a comment.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. There's a question here. Let's take that question. If anybody has a question, please put up your hand and get the mic. There's a question.
Can I ask one question?
Maybe after him.
Okay.
You're wearing a badge. I won't let you right now.
Hi. This could be for Minal, and then anyone can also answer for this. The question is like, if you don't draw a line between porn and erotica, then how do you face the government policies that is coming around in India? And if there is any ban or something, then how do you really see it as? Is it a ban on art, or it's a ban on freedom of expression or something? Like, how do you really see it as for that question?
Minal?
Yes, there is actually an important issue coming around, and I think online you can find petitions about this, around new regulations for pornography in India. So, I certainly think for publishers, one needs to be careful and stay on a certain type of the law. That does not mean that the law is correct, and I do hope that in India we will have a publisher who is willing to challenge that law, to take a case up to the court, up through the courts, and that over time also that people will see that there is in legal terms the term is obscenity, and to me obscenity does not lie in which body part of mine might touch which body part of yours. To me, obscenity lies in child malnutrition, hunger, violence, genocidal policies. This is obscenity to me.
Thank you for that answer. Yeah, there's another question. You can ask a question now if you want. Oh, sorry, there's one there.
There was a statement, if Brits had not come, India would have been the land following Khajuraho. Do you think that would be a real thing in India? Do you think what is being considered as the erotica, you could read back to your grandparents, or you would like to read it to your grandchildren together?
Let me put it this way, that I'm going to answer this question because I was the one who interjected with that comment. It wasn't a comment by Minal. Just to say that, Minal did make a point that, hey, listen, it is the vestiges of a particular era and a Victorian kind of a feel, which actually changed the course, possibly. All we are saying is possibly our erotica would have been at a different journey in its entire complete journey. So one is not passing a value judgment and saying that what is right and what is wrong. All we are saying is possibly the erotica journey of Indian literature got truncated at a point of time, and then it's back on the rails now, and thanks to a whole lot of writers who have come back into that space. Let me take the next question. Sir, you with a badge, I'd like to take other questions. We'll come back to you, sir. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to ask, do you think in the future we'll ever have a discussion where we have Hindi authors in such a discussion? Do you think regional erotica will ever get accepted? In
very good one. Literature? Why Hindi? We want Tamil. I want Telugu. I want Kannada. I want Kannada. We have enough Kannada and erotica around here. So why not? Any other comment? Minal? Yeah, okay. Let's take that question.
This is directed to Mr. Ashok. Sir, you seem to suggest, you suggested that the book Song of Songs found its way into the Bible by accident. I want to know why you think so, because I think sex and spirituality go hand in hand so.
Yeah, I'm wrong there. I didn't mean that it found its way by accident. I mean that the way it's interpreted by, say, the monks when I was growing up, which was leading on from the fact that British ideas of sexuality were sort of transferred to people like in the colonies. That's the point I was making. I agree with you that the two are absolutely bound together, but it's perhaps not the view of the conventional establishment.
Okay, we're running short of time. If there's any one other question. Yeah, there is one more there. Let's take one from the center and maybe one from there. Yeah. Who has got the mic? Yeah, please.
My question is to Ashok. You said you would not want to venture into porn writing. So when you're writing erotica, where would you draw the line?
Yeah, very, very good question. Because as I was writing all the time, I was trying to control it very tightly so that it wouldn't feel self-indulgent and that I was really kind of getting my rocks off on the writing. For me, it was really important that the story, that there were other levels to the novel apart from the erotic one. So in that sense, perhaps I'm not an erotic writer whole and entire. I do strongly feel that it has to be there. I mean, but not. It mustn't subsume, or it mustn't be subsumed by the other levels to the book. I feel then you just become pornographic and nothing more.
Okay, we take that question there, and then the young lady, and then we close. Yes, sir.
Good evening. It's not a question, it's more of an observation. Like in any art, we need to be trained to look at what is around. Same way here, pornography and erotica is sort of trained by people getting exposed to various things. I remember a Kannada saying, after this Gomateshwara statue was created, one of the top poets has written, Bettele kandu nagova henne, illi bandu nagu. That translates closely as, a girl who feels shy looking at the bare man's body, how about coming and feeling shy here?
Nice.
So the point of pornography, erotica is all playing games. It's about the person who writes it, and it's about the person who wants to read it. It's a point of view. It's a point of view and view alone, and we can go on playing games. So, and as this gentleman was saying, we carry it at a particular age and then drop it and then pick it up and then drop it and pick it up, and you continue with what suits you in the long run.
Sure.
Like any other art.
Sure. Thank you for that value addition. Ma'am, young lady there, please, you've been wanting the mic for a while. Will you take it? Please give her the mic and let's take a question. And that would be the last question for the evening. The authors are going to be around, and I must, even before I take that question, I must say that, the authors have their books out here, and they have enough of erotica to last you for the next 48 hours each. That's 96 hours of erotica. The authors are going to be signing their books out here. You can see them, but you cannot touch them. But they are certainly around. Okay? Okay. Last question. Come on, ma'am.
Yeah. I just want to know if you think that good erotic writing can come from authors who are virgins. I mean, do you draw from your own experiences? Do you draw from your own experiences, or do you just cook up something in your head?
Ashok, they got you, man. They got you.
No, actually, I think there's a brilliant question.
Yeah.
And I would
answer it then.
Yeah, I would agree with you that actually probably a virgin might write much better erotica than the rest of us jaded old hacks, because it's all in the anticipation. As I said earlier, I really feel it's always in the anticipation. Really good erotica is in the mind. It's nowhere else. So I would go with you on that one.
Hey, on that count, ladies and gentlemen, what's really happened is I was researching. I'm a big one on Twitter. So I was researching if there is something on Twitter which is like erotica. There's plenty of erotica on Twitter, and I tried to follow different links and go and see what's happening. But I was totally disappointed. If at all Twitter and the 140-character movement is not going to threaten any one genre, it's erotica. Because you cannot have erotica in 140 characters. You have to read guys like this, ladies like this, and ladies like this to get going. So, ladies and gentlemen, on that count, thank you for a lovely audience, being a lovely audience, and you're welcome to go across and look at the signing and pick up your books from the table which is going to be around. Thank you. Pleasure being here.